This week on Stogie Geeks News, we bring you a special primetime edition. We have stories from Espinosa, Viaje, Black Label Trading Company, CAO, and a ton of legislative items. Plus, we'll have a little bit of a hot topics discussion thrown in there. Our headlines of the week are sponsored by Stogie Geeks. Stogie Geeks is the industry's leading cigar podcast. Join Paul Asadorian and yours truly, Will Cooper, as each week we feature a top industry guest, a lifestyle segment, and a talk about the cigars we smoked. Our guests have included Jorge Padron, Jose Sejas, Jose Blanco, Jonathan Drew, Christian Aroa, Rocky Patel, Hans Christian Hosgaard, Abe Flores, Lito Gomez, and many, many more. Tune in Monday, 6:30 Eastern Time for all the action. This Monday, December 12th, our featured guest will be the one and only Jack Tarano. Check out www.stogiegeeks.com for more information. Welcome to this very special edition of Stogie Geeks News. I'm calling this Stogie Geeks News Primetime Edition. I'm your host, Will Cooper. I'm actually testing out a new format tonight, and I figured what better way to test it out than to have some folks tune in and see how it's going. We're just testing this out. This is I'm actually in Studio C in North Carolina. We have no production crew. This is a one-man show. This is a cold run I'm doing of this show, so I just want to kind of see how the format goes and kind of do it. And I figured, again, what better way? This won't be something that's available on the podcast catches or anything. I may throw the YouTube video up there. I'll keep the Facebook Live thing going as well. So what we're going to do is we are going to go through a bunch of headline topics for the week ending on December 9th, 2016. And, the amazing thing, what I find this, since the FDA ruling has come into effect, I've heard this talk that there has been a slowdown of cigar news. Actually, I kind of have thought it's the opposite. The news has actually gotten a lot more interesting, and with all due respect to some of the great manufacturers, this is a lot better than reporting on a shop edition cigar. So I think there's been some really interesting stories this particular week. We kick it off with Espinosa cigars, and it's a story that broke earlier this week. We covered it on Cigar Coop. Espinosa Cigars has shifted production for most of the 601 line to the new AJ Fernandez factory, and this is kind of a move I think that caught a lot of people by surprise. And so really what's happening, what you see here is AJ Fernandez is continuing to kind of build up a set of clientele here. And at this point, he has now taken on Espinosa cigars. Now, the other thing that's interesting is these cigars are actually being produced at AJ Fernandez's new factory located in Ocotel, Nicaragua. So Ocotel is about 50 miles north of the Esteli border. It's actually up towards the Honduras-Nicaraguan border. So under the arrangement from talking to Hector Alfonso, who is the director of factory operations over at La Zona, he said that most of the 601 line would be going up to AJ's factory. They would continue to make cigars for obviously themselves, namely things like Laranja will continue to be made at Espinosa, and the various clientele that they have. So big news out of Espinosa this week, and we'll talk a little more about that in the second segment. Moving forward, it's that time of the year at Viaje, and Viaje has announced the Holiday Blend Edition Limited 2016, and in classic Viaje style, the release is shrouded with mystery. What we do know is it's a 5x58 Robusto offering that's going to be offered in 20 count bundles, which is the first time the Viaje Holiday Blend has been produced in bundles. We don't know much about the blend nor where it's being made. Originally, the Holiday Blend made its debut in 2009, and it's been an annual release every year since 2009, with the exception of 2013. Last year's edition, actually, production moved over to the PDR Cigars factory in the Dominican Republic, and the cigar changed blends from a Nicaraguan Puro to a Brazilian Arapiraca blend in a box press Robusto. Again, we don't have many more details of this other than we do know that retailers have been contacted already for the Holiday Blend. Heading over, Black Label Trading Company. It's a company that's kind of gotten a good boost in 2016. They have announced that the Deliverance Nocturne is back. This is a annual limited edition cigar that's produced by James Brown at Fabrica Oveja Negra, and he has been. This is the third iteration of the Deliverance, and last year Deliverance introduced its Nocturne offerings and introduced two Salomons. One is called the Snub Nose, and the other is the Short Salomon Snub Nose. And if you ever saw those cigars, they're like little baseball bats. They really look kind of cool. And this time, Nocturne is coming back with both of those sizes, the snub nose and the short Salomon snub nose, and now they're adding in a 5x56 Perfecto into the equation. The blend will be this. For the Nocturne will be the same as it was for last year. Pennsylvania broadleaf wrapper, Nicaraguan Habano binder, and a combination of Nicaraguan and Pennsylvania filler. It, of course, will be made at the Fabrica Oveja Negra factory. And from what I understand, these are now already arriving at retailers as we speak. CAO has its holiday hoard coming out. And what they've done is a sampler pack. For the past 3 years, CAO has done a seasonal release around the Christmas season. And this year, they've taken some of those seasonal releases that came out around Christmas time, and they actually threw in an additional release from the 4th of July, I guess just for kicks. The sample is called the CAO Holiday Hoard, and it's going to feature 7 different blends. It's going to feature CAO Angry Santa. It's a release from 2013. That's a modified version of La Traviata. CAO Evil Snowman. That's also from 2013. A modified version of the CAO La Traviata Maduro. The CAO Nasty Nutcracker. That's a 2014 release. That's a tweaked version of the CAO Gold. The CAO Rapid Reindeer, another 2014 release, which is a tweaked version of the CAO MX2 utilizing Nicaraguan and Honduran Ligeros. The CAO Stingy Scrooge, a 2015 release, from what we've been told, 5 tobaccos from 5 different countries. CAO Wicked Winter, another 2015 release, Honduran wrapper over Nicaraguan fillers. And the non-Christmas release is the CAO Sinister Sam, which is a tweaked version of the CAO America that was released in 2014. Features a broadleaf binder and a Ligero-driven filler with a hint of Colombian tobacco. Each of the 7 offerings are in a 6.5 by 50 Toro size Vitola, and there will be 2 blends two cigars per blend for a 14-count sampler. Meanwhile, we have plenty of excitement on the from the FDA front. The first story is comes from the House Appropriations bill, which, as folks know, this is something that the cigar industry has been working with Congress on. Basically, as part of the Appropriations bill, which funds the government, they were looking to have a clause in there to exempt premium cigars and move the predicate date. They actually got that clause into the House Appropriations bill. This week, though, there was an override that happened, and the override was by something which is called a continuing resolution. And basically, the continuing resolution, it's superseding what was in the appropriations bill, and it's going to allow the government to operate for the next 4 months under the current funding model. So there was a little bit of misinformation, I think, on this, because I had seen some reports saying the language was stripped, it was dropped. That really wasn't the case. It actually was that this continuing resolution is something that overrides the appropriations bill. Now, the continuing resolution has passed through the House. It actually still has to pass through the Senate in order for this to actually take place. So that's something we're going to watch over the next few days. I think thoughts are, from what I'm hearing, it's going to pass. But this shouldn't be anything to say. This wasn't anything, I think, against the cigar industry. It's what happens when you kind of go through this appropriations process, and it was kind of just jungled in with a lot of other stuff. We'll talk a little about that in the Hot Topics segment I have coming up as well. But there was plenty more legislative news. IPCPR, they actually announced in a year-end communication that a court date has been set for the Cigar Industry Trade Association lawsuit against the FDA. The date is scheduled for July 28th, 2017. And in that, during that date, there will be oral arguments presented to the U.S. District Court located in the District of Columbia, and it's going to provide both the plaintiff and the defendant an opportunity to present their arguments on why each should prevail. So we have a long wait ahead, and there's obviously a lot of continuing motions and counter motions that are filed during this period, but this actually will not happen until after the 2017 IPCPR trade show. So stay tuned on that. It's going to be a very long road ahead. Finally, one last thing is this came out earlier today. The FDA has provided for a 6-month grace period for product and establishment registration. And if folks have been talking to people in the cigar industry, they've been frantically trying to get this submission process done, or this registration process done for the FDA. Basically, by the end of the year, there was a requirement that was in place that said you had to have your establishment registered as well as the products registered. Today, the FDA announced that there was a 6-month grace period that's being applied. And I actually spoke to one manufacturer today who was actually kind of pissed because he actually had just spent all week filling out the paperwork, gets it done finally for all his SKUs, and then he discovered that he actually had another 6 months to do it. Now, it's a grace period. So basically, I've heard the word extension used. I guess it's a technicality, but it's a grace period. They're technically still encouraging everyone to get their product registration in quite early right now, and you know, get all their submissions prepared as far as that goes. So you know, stay tuned on that. And those are the headlines for the week. I'll give a quick note to our sponsors, and then we will come back and talk a little more about this. If you have some comments in this beta test of the Stogie Geeks Primetime Edition, put them in the chat room. I will try to answer these the best I could. I'll only be monitoring the chat room tonight, so stay tuned, but I'll give some thoughts on some of these headlines. Our Hot Topics segments are sponsored by Cigar Coop. Cigar Coop is the leading online industry periodical dedicated to cigar news and cigar reviews. Founded in 2010, Cigar Coop is the industry's only 365-day-a-year publication. Since July 3rd, 2012, Cigar Coop has published original content each and every day. Cigar Coop is recognized as an industry-leading source, and as always, is rumor-free and teaser-free. It's the official source of Stogie Geeks news. Check out www.cigar-coop.com. Anyway, yeah, I want to say hi to my friend Todd Johnson. Appreciate you coming in on vacation. Welcome back to the special edition of Stogie Geeks News Primetime Edition. This is a beta test. This is simply me dry running a concept to see how it's going to work. This will not be something that's available in the podcast catchers, but it is available exclusively to you on YouTube and you on Facebook. So a lot of headlines actually happened this particular week. You know, the news out of Espinosa, I think, was a big headline this week. And I think there's a few things that are happening here. You know, a lot of people are just kind of scratching their head at this particular move, saying, well, why would Espinosa move some of his production to AJ Fernandez? You know, if you've heard a lot of Eric's talk, you know, he, I think, was someone that really wanted to take control of his process, have control of his production. But obviously, you know, it was something that, you know, had to change. Now, basically, I think what's happening here is this. Espinosa is basically hitting capacity in the factory. And they had two options. They had a few options. Option one is they expand the factory. You know, option two is they have to maybe drop some clientele or cut back on stuff. Or option three is they find a third party. And I don't think they wanted to obviously cut back on anything right now. They're producing some really good quality product right now. And I don't think they wanted to invest in another factory, because if FDA kind of goes through the way it goes through, it's going to be a problem, because, you know, if they go and invest in a factory and now suddenly they can't produce this extra stuff, it's a real problem. So I think great solution kind of going up to AJ Fernandez. You know, he obviously has already expanded his factory, so he's kind of going at it a little differently. And, you know, I talked to Hector Alfonso this week from Espinosa Cigars when this story broke. And you know, Hector, I think this is a genuine enthusiasm the company has for this. I think it's, you something they're looking forward to. If the FDA thing actually turns the cigar industry's way, it opens up a whole bunch of new concepts as far as what maybe they could do, starting to play with AJ's tobacco, so to speak. So I think a good move for Espinosa cigars, and I'm kind of excited to see what's going to happen there. Will Cooper, this is Stogie Geeks News Primetime Edition, the beta show. Namely, we're just testing things out tonight. A little bit of a different format I'm trying to tweak on Stogie Geeks News. We're talking about some of the big headlines of the week. And, Peter has a question as far as the grace period goes for the U.S. manufacturing only for the cigar industry. Ambiguous, Pete. There's a lot of ambiguity on what that exactly means, so I'm not even going to try to answer it. But basically, I think the assumption for most people in the industry is if you're making cigars here or if you're importing cigars, you have to register it. But I have heard there's a lot of ambiguity. I've seen the ambiguity myself. Moving ahead to the House Appropriations bill being overridden this week by that continuing resolution. My thoughts on this are, I think a lot is being put into this appropriations process. I think a lot of hope's been put in on it, and I don't want to sound negative on this. I want to kind of sound positive. I think it's great that the cigar industry is attacking things on a lot of different fronts. So I don't want to kind of sound like, I think we have to, Glenn Loops kind of said it, you have to kind of attack it on different fronts, so to speak. But I think a lot's been put into this appropriations piece, and I think it's a very difficult process as what we're seeing right now, because this is mixed in with so many other things. Last year, when this was part of the process, it got swapped out. Now this year, they opted to go with a continuing resolution, and it's a lot of work. And the thing is, once that work is done, they got to start the process all over again next year. So, I think it is an important step the cigar industry is taking. I wouldn't call it, it's a defeat. It's not a win, so I'm going to call it a defeat right now. And as a result, I think we got to get some more wins. But I think there's other fronts we got to produce, namely the judiciary front, and possibly getting those bills through the House as far as having a permanent exemption goes. As Todd pointed out in the chat room, no money, no regulation either. So, the other thing to kind of note is, if they don't fund these things, it actually, it's a good thing. It doesn't undo the law, so to speak, but they can opt not to fund it, which is interesting there. Court date for the trade association thing. The interesting thing, there's 3 trade associations: the Cigar Association of America, the Cigar Rights of America, and the International Premium Cigar and Pipe Retailers, IPCPR. For some reason, the IPCPR is always the one that takes it on the chin of these 3 organizations. They get beat up more than any of the other 3. And okay, I'm not gonna say they don't deserve it from time to time, but they get beat up a lot, and they seem to be the one that got beat up the most, I think, with this whole process as far as the lawsuit this year. But I think IPCPR deserves a ton of credit this particular week. They came out and they communicated to their members that the lawsuit date was scheduled on July 28th, and I give them a big bravo. I really give them a big bravo on that. That is good for them. And, in a lot of ways, I don't know why IPCPR took the brunt of this. Ultimately, these regulations, or these first round of regulations, affect the manufacturers. I don't think they affect, I don't want to say they don't affect the other branches. They absolutely do. But, again, I would say where are the other manufacturers? Now, CAA is really the one, I think, that they're the ones that represent the manufacturers. They're a quieter organization. They kind of just do what they do from a lobbying standpoint. While I think IPCPR and CRA are more consumer facing. But I want to kind of commend IPCPR. That was a good move. I think they need to continue to keep their members informed right now. I think so. I would say use this as a stepping stone. Keep up the great work as far as that goes. Peter actually hit another point I was going to hit on towards the end of this, and obviously he mentions Mr. Rudy Giuliani, and if there's something I probably have been beating the drum on Stogie Geeks and Stogie Geeks News the past few weeks and on various other shows, I said that Rudy Giuliani will not help the cigar industry. My position for that is that Rudy Giuliani can say he loves cigars. I think Rudy Giuliani is a great guy personally, but he has done nothing in 6 years whatsoever to help the cigar industry. Well, on election night, Rudy actually gave us was on Fox News. I think a lot of people knows, and he called out some of the cigar manufacturers in Miami. You know, he mentioned the Padrones. He mentioned My Father's Cigars. There was this kind of, we all got excited when we heard that. I mean, I got excited too when we heard it. It was a great announcement. But then, following the way the election went for Donald Trump, there was kind of this, and how Rudy Giuliani was close to Donald Trump. Suddenly, I started hearing how Rudy Giuliani was going to save the cigar industry. And when I'm saying I heard this, these were from some pretty big names. I'm not going to call the names out on the show, but if you listen to other interviews with some pretty big names, they were basically beating the drum how Rudy Giuliani was on our side. He was going to save the industry. I've kind of taken the approach with, one, Rudy had no track record of helping the cigar industry whatsoever, other than buying some cigars and smoking it. And two, the cabinet appointments he was looking at really weren't anything that was going to have tobacco as a primary focus. And word has come out today that Rudy Giuliani will be going back into the private sector and will not be getting the Secretary of State job. He's withdrawing his name from consideration. So the news here is there's no news, because Rudy Giuliani was not going to help the cigar industry on that. So it's an unfortunate thing, you know. I guess, again, kind of going with the Glen Loop theory, you want to hit things on a lot of fronts. I wasn't trying to be negative. I've kind of gotten called out saying I've been negative on this whole thing. I'm not negative. I've been realistic as far as what I've heard from, what I've seen and what I've heard. We've taken a lot of hits as far as an industry goes. I didn't see this as a big win. So, it's unfortunate as far as that goes, but wish Rudy all the best. I hope he continues to smoke lots and lots of cigars. Nathan asked, have we asked for Rudy Giuliani's help? I think the answer is probably yes. Rudy Giuliani has actually, if you look on social media, every cigar maker who has had Rudy Giuliani in their office has had a photo taken with him. So he's been in a lot of retailers. There's been a photo taken with him. And I'd say these are, there could be 100 of them out there if you Googled it. And as far as, that 100 goes, if no one bothers to ask Rudy Giuliani to help us, I would be real surprised there. So my answer is probably he has been asked, but again, I think this is a more complicated process, so to speak. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, that concludes this special Stogie Geeks Stogie Geeks News Primetime Edition beta test. Check us out on Monday night for the Stogie Geeks show at 6:30 p.m. And be sure to check out Cigar Coop, www.cigar-coop.com, for all the latest news and reviews. We are going through our Cigar of the Year countdown on Cigar Coop. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.